You could not help but admire his frankness. He's the best conman I ever met.
I won't beating anybody but a load of chiselling bookmakers, and they'd ought to be beat.
Utterly brazen, Barrie loves to dramatise himself and his nefarious work.
I never had any compunction about ringing a horse. Certainly it were crooked. Your game's full of thieves. I was cheating cheaters.
Are these the daring exploits of a lovable rogue, or the wild tales of a conman? That's what I was going to investigate. Peter Barrie, one of the most successful grifters in 1930s America. Little is known about his early life because of his habit of lying about almost everything. He was likely born in Edinburgh in 1888. At some point, he emigrated to Australia, as in 1914 he enlisted in the Anzacs as a farrier and horse dentist.
I got sent to Gallipoli and wounded in my right arm.
Not really. He caught dysentery and septic foot and was shipped back to England. At his medical, there was no evidence of a war wound. Back to civilian life, and it wasn't long before he was arrested for a string of horse frauds which landed him in jail for 3 years. Released in 1923 and broke, he did what he would later do best and sold his story to the press. In the magazine John Bull, he wove a wild story about his exploits.
My fraud of choice was ringing. It's where you have a good horse and you disguise it to look like a bad one. The bad one runs at much higher odds, and if it wins, it can be extremely lucrative.
This horse is a ringer.
Counterfeit?
Yeah, 4. But the police cracked down on crooks at the tracks. Known to the police and realising that his time in Britain was up, Barrie left for Canada in 1923 and bribed his way across the border to the United States. Meanwhile, the US was experiencing a horse racing boom. The laws which had prohibited gambling were removed, and the sport exploded in popularity. By 1925, Barrie was working in the stables of top trainer Sam Hildreth, whose horses had won the Belmont Stakes 7 times. Hildreth was an alleged associate of New York kingpin Arnold Rothstein, who fixed the 1919 World Series and inspired the character of Mayor Wolfsheim in The Great Gatsby. Rothstein was later assassinated for gambling debts in 1928. Barrie was also associated with Detroit's fearsome Purple Gang, who were suspected of playing a part in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929. By 1926, Barrie had enough money to buy several racehorses and set up his own operation. He moved across the country, winding up in Chicago with 2 horses named Kalakaua and Bobby Dean.
Kalakaua was a good horse and cost $2,500. Bobby Dean was a very bad horse and cost $100. Obviously, they look completely different, but luckily, I have a number of tricks up my sleeve. Henna I used as a dye because I had to wash out. White markings, bleach. If you want the horse to look younger, you can slit the gums, fill in the teeth. And if it was supposed to have been gelded or castrated, but was still fully intact, I apply ice cubes, know what I mean? With all my disguises, nobody could tell what I was doing. I fooled race inspectors, officials. I was the last of the great artists.
Could you affect the horse's performance in the race, make it go faster or slower?
Oh yeah, plenty of ways. If I wanted it to go faster, I'd give it cocaine or caffeine. If I wanted it to go slower, I'd give it laudanum or chloral hydrate. My own special mixture was heroin, glycerin, strychnine, digitalis and cola nut.
In 1932, he sold his story to the New York Daily News. There he told the tale of what happened when Kalakaua ran disguised as Bobby Dean that day.
My associates had brought the horses to Chicago. It had rained quite heavily in the days beforehand, and the track was quite muddy. I knew Kalakaua didn't run well on mud, so I goes to 'em. They're staying in this swanky hotel in Chicago. When I get there, there's women, bathtub full of champagne. They've been partying for 2 days because they think they're going to win $250,000. And I says, look, I don't think he's going to win this. And he says to me, hey, we put up a lot of dough and come 500 miles to bet on that horse. You better start him, or there'll be trouble. Now, I didn't fancy eating with the fishes that day, so I run the horse anyway. Now, the jockey had actually ridden Kalakaua before. Now he was riding him as Bobby Dean, and he had no idea I was that good. And then, well... At the half-mile pole, Bobby Dean was out in front, all by himself, 4 lengths ahead, with nothing to do but run in and clean up. Then, about a furlong from the winning post, the good thing went wrong, and what Barrie feared actually happened. The horse slipped in the mud and nearly went down. Bobby Dean was beaten 3 lengths for the win, and the nose for the place. So, not one of my finest moments. The gang only just made up their losses, and it was time for me to move on. Now the thing is, back then nobody kept any detailed records about horses, so as long as you got them looking just right, you could fool anyone. So I float around the States the next few years here and there, ringing horses.
And then tell me all about that business in 1931, one of the biggest scandals in horse racing history.
Yeah, Aknahton.
In September 1931, Barrie bought Aknahton for between $3,500 and $5,000. For less than $500, he bought Shem. Shem had shown no promise in training and had never raced before. In October, Aknahton, disguised as Shem, lined up for a race at Havre de Grace in Maryland. Nobody had any idea that this supposedly bad horse, with odds as high as 52 to 1, was actually a very good one.
Shem got away 5th. After he breezed along about a furlong, Leishman hit him once and it was all over. He came away like a bullet. The crowd let out a roar as a long shot opened up daylight on the field. Shem won by 4 lengths.
$250,000 had supposedly changed hands. But unsurprisingly, people became suspicious. The gangster Nate Raymond, previously linked to the murder of Arnold Rothstein, was reported to have bet $2,500 on Shem. That's over $50,000 in today's money. How could the form of a horse valued at under $500 only a few days before the race have improved so dramatically to draw wagers of $20,000 from across the country? That's over $400,000 in today's money. The win allegedly netted Barrie's associates over $1 million, but...
The bubble burst! The tip-off went in! Every gangster in New York was in the know. The wise guys couldn't keep their mouths shut.
The scandal caught the attention of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, who had been policing racetracks since the 1880s. But before they could investigate, Barrie and the horses had disappeared. He moved across the country, and the Pinkertons would pursue him for almost 3 years. $2,500 on a single bet. That's more than most people earn in a whole year. These guys were making a lot of money. And I bet you were making a fair bit as well.
Not really. One time I'd ringed Aknahton again and my associates had won $200,000. Now I go up to New York to collect my share. When I get there, they tells me it's all been lost in a dice game. We've all had a tough break. Never mind. You'll get your money some other time.
In 1932, still pursued by the Pinkertons, Barrie moved Aknahton to Mexico. Disguised as a horse named Galemont, which he'd bought for $100, Aknahton won twice at Agua Caliente. Then he moved on to Miami. There, still disguised as Galemont, Aknahton stumbled and nearly finished last. Officials became suspicious of the large bets placed on Galemont and impounded the horse for inspection. This time, there was nowhere to run. They realised that Gailmont was a ringer. The giveaway was the fact that the real Gailmont had been castrated, whereas Aknahton was still fully intact. They noticed that he also looked an awful lot like Shem, who had won at Havre de Grace in October.
And then they arrested me at a garage in Miami. End of story? Not quite. Can't catch me that easy. Colouring horses wasn't actually a crime, so they let me out on bail, which I skipped, obviously.
Why nobody chased up on the obvious racketeering is not known, but it would be 2.5 years before the Pinkertons caught up with him again. But the ring was beginning to tighten. In March 1932, New York made it a felony to tamper with a racehorse. By 1934, he was known to authorities in New York, Maryland, Florida, Canada, and Mexico. The introduction of saliva testing, advanced photography, and ID tattoos made it harder to disguise horses. His downfall was anticlimactic. After almost 3 years on the run, he was eventually arrested in Saratoga in 1934 after a tip-off to the Pinkertons. Handed over to the immigration authorities, his time in the US had come to an end, and he was deported back to Britain. He tried his tricks again for a few more years, but it was much harder this time. Not only was security much tighter, but he was middle-aged and past his prime. Nobody seemed that interested in his story anymore. In 1945, he was spotted by officials at a racecourse and asked to leave. He quietly obliged. At one point, he tried flogging his own Barrie tonic, guaranteed to turn any horse into a winner, for 25 shillings. It contained potassium bromide, caffeine, and alcohol.
I was looking to this tonic to give me the fortune I intended to have before retiring to a life of ease in Australia.
But that never happened. Barrie died in 1973, aged 85, alone, in a council home for single men. No family, no friends, no will. There was nothing to leave behind except his story. Despite his fall from grace, he was a sympathetic figure for many.
Barry's no bad guy. You know the real villains? Them gamblers who's making all that money off him.
It's not like he was going round robbing people, he was only working the turf. And with all those detectives looking for him, I'm quite impressed that he was on the run for that long. Hey mister, when's this getting in the papers? I want to show my man.
Barrie profited from this mythology because it hid the real victims of his crimes. He might fit the mould of a charming criminal in the golden era of crime, but really he was a ruthless, selfish conman who preyed on whoever he could. Before leaving for America, he was involved in a large ringing scandal in London. He'd exploited the extremely wealthy and hopelessly naive businessman Norman Weiss.
He was the prize mug of the world. A pigeon, ready for plucking. He got 15 months imprisonment for conspiracy. Man with a good position. A rich man. An innocent man. Whose only offence was that he was a tool for rascals like myself. The truth is, Weiss knew nothing. He was as innocent as you. When he appealed his sentence, the court ruled that the jury were entitled to reject his story because it required excessive faith in his own stupidity.
Factor in the animal cruelty, and this is a portrait of an unscrupulous criminal who relishes his own mythology. We know you like to hear all about a criminal kingpin. That's why a guy like this dominates popular culture.
Oh, I'm not a kingpin. I'm a lovable rogue.
And one which, for decades, you have been unable to resist.
Well, thank you. I try my best.
But this guy, He's no lovable rogue. He's a loser. You know what, pal? You never found riches because you were a tool. You were used by other guys and you weren't even smart enough to stop yourself from being used. They ripped you off and you ripped off the real victims. The ordinary person trying to make a quick buck in the middle of a depression. The guy putting down money he can't afford to lose in the hope that a horse wins and solves all his problems. But it won't, because it's all fixed.
Now don't you get all morally superior with me, Chuck. Your business loved what I did. I sold your papers.
That's true, and that's on us. We knew that your wild tales could sell papers, so we didn't bother to investigate what was true or not, or whether it was even worth giving you that platform. The big guy, you got what was coming to you in the end. You died poor, alone, forgotten. You clung desperately onto the image of yourself from decades ago, and even that was a lie. We really wanted to tell this story in a unique and interesting way to bring this period and the characters to life. So if you've enjoyed this video, do subscribe to stay updated and check out some of our previous work. Maybe even share this video with some wise guys.
Now I'm the king of the ringers on the racetrack VIP. I've reached the top, not gonna stop, no lawman bothering me. I wanna be a big gangster, the richest guy around. Splash my cash, I'm no white trash, I'm tired of fooling around. Oh, ooby-doo, see what I can do. A switcheroo, betting coup, book is blue. My tricks are tried and true, so much sweet revenue. It's not a crime, just simple daring do. Now don't try to kid me, wise guy, I made a deal with you. I'll ring the steeds and do the deed, so you'd best follow through. Cough up the dough, wise guy, hand me what I'm due. I did my share, so let's be fair and then we can be through. Oh, ooby-doo, see what I can do. A switcheroo, betting coup, book is blue. My tricks are tried and true, so much sweet revenue. It's not a crime, just simple daring do.